Hi, everybody. Welcome to our presentation for managing a growing business. This is Ashley Inman reporting on behalf of Group One, which is comprised of Haley, Pedro, Mark, Matt, and Stephen. We're excited to share a little bit about what we learned in this interview process. So there were a few common themes that were pretty prevalent when we were talking with our entrepreneurs. The big three areas that came to light while having these conversations were A, communication and people were key factors in successful growth or causing challenges. B, that a lack of focus on the niche or like a specific area or industry presented some pretty significant challenges when it came to achieving desired growth. And lastly, the big theme was cash flow and the use of debt. Both were very common topics of discussion across all three of our interviews. So let's dive into who we actually interviewed. What we really liked about these interviewees was their diverse backgrounds and ability to bring very different perspectives to our discussion. We tried to get an entrepreneur that represented at least one large company, one mid-sized company, and one smaller startup to cover the full spectrum of businesses. As you can see on the slide, we have two serial entrepreneurs that can represent different industry avenues. One's more like private equity, one is more clinical research, and then Maury in the middle is kind of like a turnaround artist. So it was interesting to hear from all three of them. Okay, with that said, let's dive into the key takeaways, starting with communication and people. So communication across business leaders that we interviewed was a very common priority. So we all know that many companies are filled with great people, but they're also filled with not so great people. But you need to have either way, you need to have a very clear two-way communication to make these people high performing and the most effective. One of our interviewees said, rowing in the same direction. All of our interviewees commonly discussed their pointed efforts for clear and effective communication across the leadership team, and all kind of pointed to the consequences of bad communication. To help solidify the importance of communication, there was an instance where a founder did not communicate well amongst his partner or with his board. The struggle led to his premature departure from a successful startup that was effectively his baby. I mean, that's something you never want to see. And if communication is the reason that happened, you know that it's preventable. So that's a huge takeaway. On the flip side, if you're a leader that communicates well with your partners, you're able to take action and buy them out and kind of be more offensive or progressive in your strategies. It gives you definitely an advantage if you are an effective communicator. In the case of Doug Wade, he was managing a quickly growing portfolio of 6 to 17 companies, and he stressed the importance of people management being his biggest challenge. He said communication and monetizing the opportunity to the individual was key. He made monetary rewards each step of the way to incentivize growth and aligned his growth strategy with the incentive programs of his people. So that the proactive increase of commission rates helped, by tying it to gross margin, help guard against the slide that might have happened due to customer visits. So it just kept the team motivated, and the results showed that that was an effective approach. Okay, moving on to the next takeaway. Two of the entrepreneurs we interviewed discussed what it was like to join companies experiencing financial instability. In both examples, each company had undergone a period of inorganic growth through acquisitions and were struggling with integrating the new entities into the broader corporate structure. In both of these cases, the challenges arose due to lack of focus in the respective industries. It's kind of the classic trying to boil the ocean or do too much, where you really need to focus. One example was the waste management example. They had acquired a large amount of international companies with strange resources without adding much to the bottom line. So by selling off the international businesses and focusing on domestic growth, management was able to narrow the company's focus on the focus market and inject the much needed liquidity into the business. The other pattern is about measurement. So you see, we have stability in your market and focus, and then measurement and accountability is the recipe for success. So in terms of measurement across all of our entrepreneurs, we noticed that they all discussed how important it is to kind of have goals and key performance indicators that help keep everybody on track with the overall goal. So the last takeaway is pretty much, in a few words, cash is king and keep your debt down. This is something we've heard quite a bit this semester. I'll tell you one story. So Doug Wade, he was working 3 jobs and through undergrad and grad, and it was very important to him to not carry any student loans. Okay, so that sounds like ideal in a perfect world, but this mindset carried with him into his business career. And when he bought 1/3 of Invesco, valued at $60 million, he made a point that half of his $20 million investment had to go towards the debt. During his 5 years as CEO at this company, he acquired 11 small businesses, and they were all purchased using working capital. So growth was correlated with less debt. So his goal was to pay down and negotiate better terms with the bank. Very smart guy, very cash savvy, and that's why he was able to achieve 20% year-over-year growth. I mentioned the case of Mori and Waste Management on the previous slide, but liquidating the overseas operations just to pay down the debt to focus on the core domestic operations is what made him so successful. So in conclusion, there's a few key takeaways to success that are not surprising, and they were just reiterated in the 3 interviews our group was able to conduct. But in a few words, keep down your debt, focus on what you're good at, don't try to boil the ocean, always measure, cash is king, communicate effectively, and choose good people. That's the recipe for success. And I think that we had a great round of interviews with these folks, and we're pleased with the takeaways.